Module 2, we'll be discussing good radio communication, no TAMs, plain language English. In FAA-controlled airspace, what you may be used to calling control, we call center. Where it says arrivals and approach control radar, we refer to that as approach. Information would be flight service station, and delivery is just simply clearance delivery. So this slide says that 98% of all incidents in aviation are due to human error. 70% of all known incidents are due to breakdowns in communication between pilots, controllers, or both. When I was working traffic, I always told everybody I would rather work 10 professional pilots than one general aviation pilot. That's simply because the general aviation pilot typically had more trouble communicating. Communication breakdowns lead to mistakes. What we're trying to do here is reduce the number of mistakes that we have because of poor communication skills. In doing research for this project, I've learned that many countries use flight levels at different altitudes than I'm used to. In the United States, we use flight level when we're talking about someone 18,000 feet or higher as a general rule. If we look at this slide, the phraseology is Golf Bravo Delta Alpha Lima, descend to 500. As a result of that phraseology, the pilot descended to 500 feet. The air traffic controller meant to say to descend to 2,500 feet. His correct phraseology would have been Golf Bravo Delta Alpha Lima, descend to 2,500 feet. In the United States, you will not generally hear an air traffic controller or pilot use the word feet. We would simply say descend and maintain 2,500. Notice the difference is we tell aircraft to descend and maintain followed by the altitude. So we don't use the word to when we're using an altitude. And the same thing with climb. It's simply climb and maintain 8,000. I didn't make this slide, but I'm going to use it. When it comes to phraseology, use the KISS theory. KISS, in case you're not sure, is in English, keep it simple, stupid. That's actually an old nautical phrase, and it came from keep it simple, sailor. But the point is, keep your transmissions to a minimum, make them clear, and make them concise. Don't talk too fast. If you talk fast, the air traffic controller may not be prepared to listen to you, and so you're going to have to repeat yourself. Take it slow, but don't be thinking on the radio. We tend to hear what we expect to hear. We need you to listen. Don't overly anticipate what you think air traffic control is going to say to you. I Googled it. The Swedish chef that I could find was a Muppet puppet. I didn't understand anything that he said because I don't speak Swedish, but just to watch him was kind of funny. But I honestly have no idea how it wound up on this slide. For most people that I know that are air traffic controllers, early on in training, we were taught, don't use the phrase, go ahead. Some people still do that though. Go ahead does not mean to proceed with whatever action it was that you were going to do. All it means is I'm ready to hear your message. There are certain words that we have to be very careful with when we use them in aviation. The number 2 or the word to, the number 4 or the word for, F-O-R. Go ahead also trips some people up. When I've been doing research for this course, one of the things that I learned was that many countries use altitudes lower than what I'm familiar with. In the United States, we only use the term flight level when we're talking about aircraft climbing to something 18,000 feet or higher in most cases. Sometimes it changes because of the altimeter. But I like the way in some countries they use flight level as low as 7,000 feet. It makes it a little bit easier to reduce the confusion. But if you want to tell an aircraft climb to 7,000, it could be understood as climb to 27,000 feet. The word flight level will help reduce this confusion. If you simply say clear to flight level 70. The word for can also be confusing as it can be misinterpreted as a digit. Make sure you're listening to the context where the number for or the word for come up. Again, we don't like using the phrase go ahead at any time when we talk to an airplane because that implies that they can go ahead and do what they wanted to do. What we should be using is pass your message. It's not recommended to use the word Roger anytime the message requires a readback or a positive or a negative response. As an air traffic control instructor, I tell my students there is never a good time to use the word Roger. If an airplane checks in with you and you need to acknowledge it, you can always give them an air traffic control instruction or maybe issue the ever-changing altimeter. You can certainly see the danger here. If the air traffic controller instructs an aircraft to climb to 2500, then that aircraft only climbs to 2,500 feet when he was intending to top a mountain, and what the air traffic controller meant to say was climb to 25,000. In the cartoon on the right, we have a situation where the pilot wasn't real sure if an altitude instruction was for him, and it seems that the co-pilot is also not real sure if the altitude instruction was for them. The guidance that we have for aviation English is that a pilot should state his or her location whenever making initial contact with any tower or ground controller, regardless of whether you've previously stated your position to a different controller. Use standard air traffic control phraseology at all times in order to facilitate clear and concise pilot-controller communications. Focus on what air traffic control is instructing. Do not perform non-essential tasks while communicating with air traffic control. If you are handed off from another controller, you don't need to tell us your position. If we need to verify your position, we will do that. But what we do need to know is your altitude assignment. Have written down, if you need to do it, what it is you intend to say to the next controller, and then key the radio and say it in a clear and concise manner. Don't perform non-essential tasks. Air traffic controllers should also be focusing on what you're doing, and we're not performing unnecessary tasks either.